So-and-so was born, they live, they die. So, you have to think the thing that you in that. Your paper will need correct citations, and the library website is really good at helping you with that. So in art history, we need footnotes in this. It is right now this morning I call it a notes bibliography system. We just call it the Chicago manual style. And we'll have a separate session in class on that, and hopefully the rest of them will be able to introduce them.
Yeah, definitely. I'll point you in that direction, and then Ms. Richardson, our instruction librarian, will also be able to facilitate some of that as well.
Now look at one direct quote. A direct quote is when you're taking every a long quote from the text. It's more than four lines long. Okay. The idea is for you to learn how to summarize and to paraphrase without plagiarizing. So we'll have a session in class about that. And so we'll go more into this bullet point later, but you cannot plagiarize. I haven't penalized you if you get caught plagiarizing. So if anybody gets caught plagiarizing, you get a grade of 0 in the paper, and if this is part of your final exam, you will end up failing the final exam. It's really bad, and there'll be more consequences. Follow the directions for finding sources that was directed by Mr. Brandon's class today. But we also have the Richardson who tuned in, and she's not right here.
She's observing me today, so she's trying to be, yeah.
We love to help students, so if you have any questions about the library website, citations, things like that, and all of this, they're great resources. And the paper must be at least 1,500 words, it's approximately 5 pages per double space. This goes back to your all the other level registered sites require 5-page double space essay. And aside from that, go to a separate works consultant page, because I'll see what you cited, find your footnotes before in notes. But you might get information from another source, so I want to see that too. And your picture or pictures that you're in the library. So let me turn it over to Mr. Brandon. Mr. Brandon, he's now the director of the teaching and learning center. Brand new to that.
Yeah.
Brand new to the library.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. Yeah, I'm the director for the Kaufman Center for Teaching and Learning, as well as the data services librarian here at Fant. We're really happy to have you here. Instruction is one of the primary roles that we fill as academic librarians. And so just to reinforce what Dr. Joyce was talking about is that we do genuinely love to help patrons. You are our patrons. We want you to be successful. And we want to provide you with all of the resources, direction, instruction that we can to help you be successful and to help you feel confident in that success. So for today, we're going to be doing more of an introductory session. I'm going to be introducing you to a lot of the databases and research resources that we have on the library website, as well as a few of the areas that might extend into a few more of these areas regarding the assignment. In general, search terms and databases will be what we'll be focusing on. I've yet to rename this presentation, but I use a lot of metaphors for the research journey. Still workshopping that if anyone has any good ideas on how I can more fully integrate my obsession with tabletop role-playing games into my instruction. I welcome feedback. So just to go over our objectives for today, we have 5 primary areas that I'm focusing on here. For one, I want you to be able to describe the resources and services available from Fant Memorial Library. with a particular focus on art and design databases. Now, because your field is a little less article focused, there are fewer databases that are expressly created for artists and designers, but they still exist. And also in general, the theory of using databases and practice of using databases applies across all fields. We need people to write and read about artists, designers, and the history of those fields. And so knowing where to find those resources is kind of the first step in starting on your research journey. Being able to generate a topic research question to guide the search process. A lot of this will be something that you'll discuss in class as well. And I know that Dr. Joyce has brought this up, kind of asking you what you're interested in researching. And I'll try to provide you with a couple strategies that I use in particular when I'm starting my research process. Because one thing that typically occurs with students or new researchers is this idea that I have to just start accruing articles and they will kind of just coalesce in osmosis into my head and it will generate a topic for me. I call it the research journey because journeys are arduous. They are a process, they take work, and the research part is only one part of the entire writing process. I want you to be able to distinguish between different kinds of resources, so journal articles, book chapters, web articles. In this wonderful digital age we find ourselves in, it's a lot easier to distinguish those resources, especially because they're categorized in a lot of different ways. But there are a few ways that we can really determine that using library resources. Being able to define peer review or evidence-based. Anybody have an idea as to the definition of a peer-reviewed article, just off the top of your head? You want to volunteer? You want to give it a shot to define it?
It's by the peers, more professional.
Bam. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We can elaborate that on a little bit more, just so that you have an idea as far as what the expectation is when you are looking for an article, journal, book that is published and it has been reviewed by what we refer to as equivalent competencies or peers. And being able to distinguish between different limiters that allow for information search adjustments. This is where we're going to go a little bit more into the particulars, you know, your backpack on your research journey and the tools that you have within our databases to be able to conduct those searches. Now, I will let you know that I'm going to try to scaffold my presentation by asking for questions. This has happened to make sure that I'm not speaking too quickly or being or not explaining something enough, but also just to slow myself down because I'm running on high octane fumes right now and I don't want to explode. So we are Fant Memorial Library. We're going to do a quick website walkthrough. So if you all could, since you have computers in front of you, go ahead and go to muw.edu/library. And you know what? I'm going to take my watch off, put it right in front of me so I don't take too much time. Now, why do I bring up a website walkthrough of the library? Because the context in which you conduct your research journey is important. And again, the library is made to facilitate that journey, not just in the digital resources or instructional resources that we provide, but also the physical spaces and context in which you can study, research, and write. For one, you might see our brand new wonderful website here. We'll be talking a bit more about our search discovery and our databases page here, but I just want to draw your attention to a few more resources that we have at the top of the page. For one, what we refer to as a LibGuide, which is basically a website that we've created for on-campus students that goes through a lot in more depth, a lot of our resources that are available, not only at our campus digitally, but also other resources that might be helpful on campus. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see a more detailed list of our more specific offerings, things like our idea book club discussions. Again, these are kind of the fun parts of it. Things I want to draw your attention to that I'll come back to near the end of the presentation. This link right here that says interlibrary loan. And right below that, research guides. Again, these are resources that we afford to you as our patrons and are really useful in, again, your research journey. Problem is I started the presentation saying I'm going to say this word a lot, and I'm saying it even more. So, library services, if you scroll down a little bit more, so these LibGuides, again, in particular, we design these so that they can be kind of a pathfinder on your academic journey. I'll move away from research because in general, these can be quite helpful in showing you those different resources. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see our reservations page. This is more for the physical space that we have available for you. Who's used a study room in the library before? Highly recommend it. 10 out of 10. Best study rooms on campus. Watch out on that side of the building. It gets a little bit hot later on in the day, but if you like it that way, reserve E, F, or G. You can reserve those rooms, study with friends, or if you just need a quiet space away from things. I find a lot of the time that, if you haven't already noticed from my presentation style, I'm a quite distractible person. And so recontextualizing myself, literally moving somewhere else with only one thing to do, can be really helpful when I'm starting out on a research journey, because I'm not sitting at my computer and I get distracted by some video game or my cat or, just the air around me. You can also book an online appointment if you need more focused help, one-on-one help with a librarian. This would be the opportunity to schedule a time with either me or Ms. Richardson, basically to go more in depth, maybe help you a little bit more along the way. I guess this would kind of be the equivalent of the Sherpa-ing during that research journey. Again, focusing on that interlibrary loan link, we're going to go more into that. As far as your assignment is concerned, you are going to be using interlibrary loan for one of these resources. So that'll be really useful to you. I'll go over how to actually go through that process. Again, we have more links to scheduling research appointments. We also have a 24-hour study space agreement. So we refer to this space as not only the digital classroom, but also the 24/7 space. What that means is that after we close at 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. on Fridays, 5 p.m. on 8 p.m. Wait, 5 p.m. on Saturdays, 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and 10 p.m. on Sundays, this space is open 24/7. So if you ever need to print, or if you need to just use a computer, again, recontextualize yourself, if you go through this 24-hour study space agreement, we'll activate your W card to let you in through the little door back here. Oh, and printing services. We can print in here, you can print out there. Part of your tuition packs in $5 worth of printing into your banner account. So basically you can print up to 50 pages, black and white, 10 cents a sheet for black and white, 25 cents for color. And so again, that can be a really useful tool, but something to be aware of. So now we get to the actual, that was just kind of me being like, hey, do you have your backpack and do you know where we're at in the cabin and everything? And now we're at the front of the trail. When I say information seeking, what does that mean to y'all? Think about it for a moment. I'm going to count backwards from 10 in my head. This was mainly so I could take a breath. What does this mean to y'all? Anybody want to volunteer an answer for that? Looking for information? Research. Information seeking. You are looking for information. We do this literally every day at very many moments. Again, the fact that you can read means that you are often information seeking. What is this building? Where is this place? Who is this person? Information seeking behavior is one thing that we as librarians use as a term to try to understand how how we can facilitate our patrons looking for information. The primary focus for this session is information seeking related to research. So the idea behind this, we're standing at the front of the trail. One of the first things that I might ask you, or I might try to facilitate, is what are you looking for? What kind of information do you need to find? In general, we have an assignment here that is telling us some of the details for what that information is. So the goal of this presentation, again, is to present you with this kind of map direction to be able to take this information and some of the questions that you'll hopefully generate as a part of this session to seek out that information, seek out those research articles or books that will be useful in helping you answer, or in some cases, even ask your question. So how do we start doing this in regards to research? We start on that nice search discovery page. Who's searched on Google before? Great. There's a good chance you searched on Google and you didn't even know it in a lot of places. In general, a lot of the time in Google, when you ask a question, how might you phrase something? Say there's something wrong with my car and I want to find out the solution. We'll say my tire's flat and it is a Honda Fit. How might I put that into Google to ask a question about how to fix my tire? How do I change my tire? Any more detailed questions we might be able to answer or ask? On a Honda Fit, there we go. Very self-evident. Google is a search database that is designed to use what's referred to as natural language, basically how we speak and think a lot of the time. So it adapts, it changes. I mean, it's a massive database. We all know how prolific Google is. One thing to keep in mind as we are seeking information on our research journey is that our search discovery bar here can be useful again for kind of those casting a broad net regarding the questions that we ask. But a lot of the time we might want to focus in a bit more as to where we're asking those questions. Again, that comparison to Google versus the databases that libraries provide. Google is this massive information repository, whereas in libraries, we have a bit more directed information seeking. So in this case, we need to start forming a question. We need to start thinking about this in a way that's going to vibe with the way our search discovery tools work, with the ways that our databases that are storing these articles work. In this regard, for this class, for this assignment, we might start by asking questions like, what or who is X? Has anyone been particularly intrigued by an artist so far that they might be able to form a question off of that? You want to share? Who is Faith Ringgold? See, I know nothing about that. I have been in the class. If I want to start researching Faith Ringgold, I will ask that question. Who is Faith Ringgold? Who studies Faith Ringgold? What is related to Faith Ringgold? When did Faith Ringgold do the thing that she did? What did she do? May paintings, cool. Okay, makes sense. So again, the idea being that we're at the head of our trail, or whatever you want to imagine as far as our adventure goes. You could be in video games, you want to be a little less physical about it. And we are basically looking at our map and thinking about, well, where do we need to go? Where do we need to find ourselves as far as seeking out our information? And as we ask these questions of ourselves, of our topic, or our person or our field of study, you can start to add in more variables. How did Faith Ringgold do painting? Or how did Faith Ringgold influence, again, those kind of active words, the engaging words, the idea being that we're trying to ask these questions that maybe other researchers have already asked. Because again, we're at the start of our research journey, but this is not just the complete wilds, the wilderness, and we're having to completely forge our own trails. Many of these trails have been paved and walked before us. We are, as Newton, I think, is ascribed to say, I still haven't confirmed whether or not it's true, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Again, the idea being that there's a really, really, really high likelihood that a lot of the questions or topics that you're thinking about, the people that you're studying, these questions have been asked before. And so because of that, we can start on that journey, and then we can kind of help maybe not blaze a whole new trail, but maybe fill it out a little bit more, maybe tamp down a bit of the overgrowth. And in some cases, just pull out our research machete and then just start going off into the wilderness in some direction or another. You won't be doing that for this class. We don't want to go too far afield. But again, this idea being that this is the first step in that research process, and we need to be responsible researchers, because it's going to be the thing that's going to dictate how much difficulty we have as we're going along our trail. Makes sense, right? Metaphorically, the idea being that if you just show up at a national park or you show up at a trailhead and you have no idea where you're going, you can follow those trails for a bit, but if you have no plan, that's pretty irresponsible. Highly recommend against that. In the same way, the research process, committing time to thinking about these questions and asking these questions, even just writing them down, will make the process easier. Here's my caveat. That word easy is a function of kind of just how you travel that research journey trail. Does not mean that it's easy in the sense that you end up doing drastically less work. What it means is that you don't end up getting lost. You don't end up following other areas or putting yourself in danger of finding bad information. Again, the idea is that we want to make this easier for ourselves. That doesn't make it just a walk in the park. Again, it's a research journey, something that we need to consider that if that research journey is easy, that means we're not really learning too much from it, are we? Right? So one thing that Dr. Joyce provided with me beforehand was this kind of idea that you could use in forming your thesis, your question statement that you are presenting at the beginning of your paper, this exploration of an obstacle that one or more of the artists in the course has overcome. We have a lot of really good words in this phrase right here that we can use in kind of thinking about how we're going to search using library resources. Just real quick, I need 3 words that are in this phrase that might be useful in forming those things from 3 different people. 1, 2, 3, go. Say them out loud. Obstacle. Exploration. Overcome. Bam. Okay. So again, we are just workshopping, we're brainstorming, we're thinking about these things, and we literally haven't even gotten to the databases in the library, right? I promise I will. But again, the reason we're doing this is because I don't want to just set you loose and then have the trail walk you. I want you to walk the trail. So what is a question that I should ask about this idea? An exploration of an obstacle that one or more of the artists in this course has overcome. Think about those questions that I presented before. You can just copy straight from those. Anybody got an artist or a timeline or a place or a movement that they're thinking about doing their research on?
What is the anti-communism efforts, silent artists?
Bam. That's a lot of really great active words. We have a lot of interrelatedness. We can also just say, what was the first, the anti-communist movement? What is the anti-communist movement? I mean, again, this idea being that when we're building these questions, we need to have at least a little bit of an understanding of what these words we're using are, or at the very least, we need to know where to find that information. And again, these questions are kind of us plotting out our map, figuring out where we want to go, which directions we want to go in, and acknowledging that along the way, we might have to make adjustments. We might move, what was the last half of your question? Silence artists. We might end up finding out that, well, you know, there's not a lot of observations or writing on the silencing of artists during this time, but I am finding a lot of just general information about how it impacted their work, maybe in a positive or negative way. And so again, the idea being that that's kind of, you know, a tree has fallen down, or, you know, maybe you see a rattlesnake, and my metaphor is so dangerous, I'm so sorry. And you go a little bit of a different way to kind of skirt that question. But again, this adjustment is going to happen as you are doing the searching. So one tool that I'd like to introduce to y'all used Jamboard before? It's literally just digital Post-it notes. So I guess I'm kind of cheating and showing you two tools that you can use. One of them is just Post-it notes. Or little pieces of paper, or just literally a piece of paper that you can write and draw on. I bet y'all can do it a lot better than I can. But the idea again is that when we use a resource like Jamboard, which I will go ahead and pull up right here. We can start to take all of those idea units that we're asking. This is just an example. I know you all aren't writing about pets, but this is one tool that you have available to you in your account that can be useful as you're plotting out that journey. You haven't stepped onto the trail yet, but you are starting to look at the map. This is where you take those terms. What is X? Who is X? When did X happen? How did X happen? What things did X do? You would start putting those terms onto my little Post-it note square, writing down on a piece of paper, something like that. And again, plotting out that map is going to be, you know, one of those first sort of really arduous points as you start. Again, with keeping in mind that we're probably going to have to make adjustments. The goal of making a more sort of comprehensive map and kind of getting all those distractions, those weird little lines of questioning that might not lead to anything, is basically, again, we're figuring out kind of the focus of our question. The example that you gave at the beginning, and then in relation to kind of the anti-communist movement and silencing artists, that's a great example of a progression starting with maybe an artist and then thinking about the time that they lived. And then thinking about, wait, what happened during that time? What is this thing that happened during this time? Man, I know what this thing is, but I mean, they lived during this, so it probably impacted them in some way or another. And so thinking about those questions, again, that idea of obstacles that this artist might have to overcome will allow you to start generating all these fun ideas. This was mainly, again, we started with the idea of pets and thinking about kind of the psychological impact of pets on things. And at first we were just talking about, oh, pets make people happier, things like that. But then we started thinking about like, well, how do pets relate to different things like isolation? Or how does the fostering of a pet versus the owning of a pet differ? How does that impact how I think about these things? Again, we're starting with those few terms, not just launching ourselves onto the trail. We're thinking about all of these things. And again, if you're like me, putting all of those ideas down and then being able to reorder them and readjust them and relate them to each other will allow you to elaborate on that question and make things a little bit easier for you as you go on your research journey. Yes. If you go, it's jamboard.google.com, or if you just go into Drive. If you hit new on here, it's in the More section. And the really great thing about this is that if you ever need to collaborate as well, you can share it with people and you can literally see them like moving Post-it notes around. Also, you can check out a study room like Study Room D or the Houston Seminar Room, and they have interactive screens. And so you can pull up a Jamboard and you can be like, here's a Post-it note, and you can like use your finger to move stuff around if you need novelty. So this is a great resource just for kind of collecting those things. And the best thing about it is that rather than having to take all of your Post-it notes and put them into a manila folder and then thinking that you're going to reorganize them and process your ideas, you end up just throwing them away. They stay nicely in the computer. Computers do a much better job of organizing thought, or organizing my thoughts, at least in that regard. Any other questions as far as kind of, again, we're just literally looking at the map. This is stuff that you probably might have heard earlier on in undergrad writing classes or even in high school. But I try to reinforce these things because we often tend to assume that that's been completely automated, when typically writing and information seeking behavior is something that we develop all the way up to the age of 25, even through grad school. Okay, the idea being that we're never completely done. We're never completely experts at asking those questions until we've done it a whole lot. Cool. So now let's go to the thing that Dr. Joyce, not share, asked me to present on, which is where to find these databases. This is where you're actually going to use those questions, where you're going to do those searches and find that information. So in general, if y'all want to, from that first page, I swapped up my slide, but I apologize. From that first page here, click on this little button right here called databases. Now, the reason we're doing this again is because we're kind of giving our search a little bit more focus. Again, you can start asking your questions in search discovery, and it's not going to completely throw you off. But what going to databases does is it restricts us a bit more so we're not distracted by, we have a lot of databases that are provided by the university. And so we're not as distracted by things maybe that are more directly related to the nursing field, to math and science. We can focus in and get a better idea of the kind of research that's happening in our particular areas. And then as we, again, as a function of doing that research and we develop our questions, we can get a little bit better at using the search discovery bar. Wait. My clicker's backwards, or maybe it's me. So when you click on that database page, you're going to see a big list. We have 121 databases that we subscribe to, or we curate at Fant Memorial Library. And we're going to have all subjects, all database types, all vendors and providers. That's what that list shows us. What I want y'all to go ahead and do is go ahead and click on all subjects and then hit art and design. Now, as you probably noticed, that list of databases is not very extensive. Again, because a lot of the overlap that you're going to be using as far as your research journey is concerned is going to be with history, things like language, basically those studies a lot of the time that wonderful interdisciplinary component to the humanities. You know, you got historians who are art nerds who are historians, so on and so forth. Now, what this is going to provide for you is a list of all of our databases that curate, or databases or journal aggregators, lots of different words for them, a lot of fun words too in library sciences. And it's going to basically show you the most used, research databases, in this case, the Getty Research Portal. But what I want to emphasize on is this little thing called JSTOR right there. Stands for journal storage. I know, very creative. And the reason I'm focusing on this is because this is a database that basically curates older articles. So if you're looking at artists that are, maybe published works or research was done about them or published a little longer ago, JSTOR is a preservation database for that information. They also have a service called ArtStore, which is not something that we necessarily subscribe to, but there are a lot of free resources there that actually will allow you to search up images and old art that's been curated. And also in general, that idea of looking for those words like humanities, social sciences, and the sciences, it's going to make things a little bit easier for you as you do search. So if you want to go ahead and in this case, we're going to go ahead and pick JSTOR. Oh, I have it here. Reminding y'all again of where things are. Takes us to this wonderful page right here. Now, we're going for all content. We're not focused on images. In this case, you are writing a paper about the history of things. You're focused on images that you might just do that for fun. But we could kind of start formulating some ideas as far as how we're going to utilize this database, how we're going to start asking our questions. I need to scaffold myself a bit more. Yes. That's strange. Anybody else getting that? When you click on JSTOR? That's weird. You might have to make a note about that computer. Also, have y'all accessed databases off campus before or any resources? One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the time, if you try to access databases that we have subscriptions to, it'll ask you for your 950. You don't have to like VPN or anything like that. A little screen will just pop up and it'll say put in your 950 and then the last 4 digits of your 950. If you see that screen, you're not in the wrong place. It's just us kind of keeping our subscriptions valid. Now, we've gotten here and I asked y'all to give me a lot of questions, give me details and things like that. But let's go ahead and start with that initial question of who is such and such, Faith. Oh, 2 G's? Oh, cool. Bam. We have 1,364 results. That's a lot. But in relation to the size of our databases, I'll show you in our search discovery, if I were to start just from this. Taking a bit longer because it's going to have a few more results there. We're going to do the discovery service here in a second, once we get to our limiters and advanced search. But we can already see that just by looking for that artist, we are finding a good number of resources. We might want to start restricting that amount, but again, if we're trying to answer that question of who is Faith Ringgold, that's going to be part of you building your bibliography, you building your paper. What you're going to want to look for in these results are basically those bits of maybe biographical information or commentary on Faith Ringgold's work that are going to allow you to elaborate your questions. So again, the idea being that understanding a bit more, you're not just writing a biography of Faith Ringgold, but in order to write about Faith Ringgold, you need to read about who they were. And so in order to do that, you find these biographies, you start reading them, you start thinking about those articles, you write down, copy the link to the articles. Again, what I highly recommend, again, that idea of you making your map, whether it be in that Jamboard, whether it be on a piece of paper, keep track of where you're going, okay? Don't just assume that everything is going to remember everything for you, or that you're going to completely retain everything you're doing when it's, you know, whatever time at night or in the morning. There are a lot of really great strategies I could go into as far as using these tools a bit more elaborately, but just for the sake of time, because I've bloviated a lot, I would recommend a Word document. Just take that link, put it into a Word document. Take the title of that article, put it into a Word document, because what that's going to allow you is that this is you walking along with your map on your research journey and seeing signposts and saying, oh, I need to go in that direction. Oh, I remember going this way. Okay, all right. You're providing yourself with a bit more leeway so you're not having to consistently recreate every single search that you conduct. So we talked a little bit more elaborately about these search terms, those search questions that you might come up with as you're starting your research journey. Who is X? What is Y? When did X live? What influenced X's work? Again, using that Jamboard is really important. And as we ask these questions, I'm going to go to main discovery right here. We might start thinking about more terms. So I saw a reference to female nudes. It would, yeah, it's Thursday. We can see right here a few things as far as commentaries on Faith Ringgold, the fabric of activism. Maybe I want to focus a bit more on that activism. Maybe how did maybe two different artists I'm thinking about manifest or utilize their art to be activists? What obstacles did they run into in enacting that activism? I can just add in that word. Wow. I've gone from over 2,000 results to 6. And this is perfect. This never happened. This is such a great example of what we refer to as the filter bubble. And this will be something that you find, again, as you're going on that research journey and you adjust those search terms, as you fill out your Jamboard, as you keep track of where you're going and you're looking for these articles, your search terms are this big bubble. So this is the big bubble. This is Faith Ringgold. Occasionally, we're going to run across unrelated or tangential papers. Maybe someone is just using the name Faith Ringgold. You probably search for things in Google and you run across ads that are basically just, you know, cross-posting keywords so that people will come across them. You know, people use it on TikTok so that their videos come up, the hashtags. Or you might have word papers or references that use different terminology, maybe things you're not using in your search terms, that you're only capturing a small part of them. Why do I bring this up as far as your search terms are concerned? Because as we just saw, when I added that word activism, what that does a lot of the time is it's going to shrink your bubble of focus. Now, this is good. Focus is good. It's my mantra. I'm trying to maintain it. It can help you, again, basically keeping your eyes on the road. But again, when we constrict or use more specific search terms, not only are we not being distracted by these unrelated and tangential papers, which is helpful, we might also be missing out on some concepts or some papers, articles, books that are maybe not formatted in the same way that we're doing our search. So again, this is that part of those collecting those articles, thinking about that search. We have to constantly adjust that. You should not start your research paper and think that the only thing you're going to have to do is search for artists' names. Okay, because again, the idea is that we have to produce some amount of intentionality. We want to walk the trail, we want to do the journey. We do not want the trail to walk us, because we want to generate something. We want to contribute something as researchers as we're writing these papers. And it's 11:48. So I'm going to make sure that I can cover all of my objectives and show you a few features in JSTOR and in our general search discovery that are going to help us adjust that bubble and kind of figure things out as we're doing our searches. Before I do that, though, I want to emphasize this. We had an idea of what peer-reviewed is. What peer-reviewed is, functionally, again, is those equivalent competencies. What this essentially means is that, or similar competencies, means that the researchers, scientists, artists, writers, historians who have reviewed that journal or reviewed that article that is published in a journal have some amount of certification or basically authority to be able to say, yes, this is a good article. We say it's okay for you to publish it. Where do we find them? Many of the articles, or most of the articles, I'm going to say many, most is too strong a word, of the articles that we're going to find in our databases are peer-reviewed journal articles. Why is that? Because we're an academic library. That's what we like to curate. We know that y'all are having to write a lot of papers and learn a lot of things. And we want to make sure that you have resources that have been vetted, have been peer-reviewed, again, by people who know what they're talking or writing about. How do we find them? In this case, in general, a lot of the time, many of the things you will come across in your searches will be peer-reviewed. But here's a tool I'm going to show you for using both JSTOR and our search discovery list. So just as a reminder, real quick, I used that search discovery and it brought me to our nice little area right here. Now let's say I'm going to refocus on Faith Ringgold, and I can get to this in many different ways, but for now, this is from within a search. Y'all used advanced search in Google before? Works very similarly. The idea being that we have what are referred to as limiters. And again, this is how we're adjusting our search bubble, our scope, kind of our, I guess binoculars in this case, still working on the metaphor. And there are a few things that are good to kind of put down as a standard when we're doing our searches. Again, this is going to restrict the amount of articles that we have. But when we start out with a whole lot, just by typing in Faith Ringgold, it's okay to start adjusting that. For one, what we can do, bam, we got a little checkbox that says scholarly peer-reviewed journals. So these are journals that are peer-reviewed. It will get rid of all the other journals that are not peer-reviewed, or pieces of information that might be published in a website, blogs that are still curated by the library system. We might want more current material. I'm not going to adjust it for this search right now, but we can adjust our publication date. In the social sciences and humanities, we tend to try to not go further back than 10 to 5 years, depending on the area that we're writing on and how basically how much publication happens in those areas. But this is something that's important to consider, because if you restrict your age date or your publication range, what that's going to do is, for historical papers, there might be something that was written about a person who lived in the 20s. And if you, maybe you want articles that are more relevant that were written at the time that person was alive. You know, maybe they were famous, something like that. If you restrict your search range to 2000 and past, you're not going to find those articles. So that's something to be mindful about, because it can be useful to kind of pare down our big bulk of search, but it can also kind of toss out those things that might be a bit more relevant for the questions that we're asking. Also really fascinating bits of the limiters as far as these are concerned is that we can restrict for language, those sorts of things. But our primary thing that we're going to click on right here is scholarly. And if you click on full text, what that does is it basically only shows those articles that we have access to the full text, meaning that we can look at a full PDF. We can look at the full journal. We basically have a subscription to that, maybe from some other service. Again, that's still going to restrict your search, because the fun thing about this search discovery page, and just to emphasize this rather than going too far into it, I click on there for my advanced search. I can do the same thing in JSTOR. Again, using the same terminology, we can use advanced search. I can restrict my access type. I can add in extra keywords. I can restrict my types to articles and books, and I can restrict my publication dates. I can even go so far as to select which articles I want to use, which journals I only want to pull from. So in this case, maybe I do art and art history, and then, oh no. And then I hit that button. No, that's out of search box. We go ahead and submit the advanced search there. We're at 112 results. You know, remember when we were at 1,000 before? So that's pared things down. Maybe I'm a little less overwhelmed, and I'm like, this is only books and articles, no other extra crap that I need to worry about. We can do the same thing with our advanced search here in our discovery service, full text, scholarly, peer reviewed. I hit search. And we see that we're not quite down to 6, but we've definitely pared it down to much fewer articles. Something I want to emphasize about the search discovery page, it has this nice little service called a research starter. Now, I didn't emphasize that before because I still want a job to be the instructor here. But this is a great resource that when you don't have direct access to us, that will actually help you in figuring out things typically about individual people. Sometimes movements also, if you're searching for something that can kind of be encapsulated in essentially a Wikipedia article, again, this is kind of your general map of those concepts. Make sense? Cool. Now, wow, 5 minutes, cool. And as we can see, we're 2 slides away. And the last, and one of the most important things, because it's part of your assignment, interlibrary loan. Anybody used interlibrary loan before? Interlibrary loan is a keystone to librarianship. It is this thing in which libraries interdepend, interlibrary, and loan articles and books to each other. Interlibrary loan. In between library, it's fun, it's great, it's all about access. We are all libraries together. We're all in it to do this stuff. Basically, if I don't click that full text box, if y'all remember during my nice little search right here, if I don't click that full text box, now again, I'm rolling the dice. Perfect. Oh, nope. Okay, I'm gonna skip that. In search of Faith Ringgold's picture books. Now, as I'm going along, this is a good little juxtaposition right here. Right here, we have a PDF full text. That means that the library has access to it. It's in whatever journal database or whatever, and we can get full access to it. However, if I find an article that I want, and we don't have it directly, if you click this little link right here, it's going to take us to this little program or this little service called Tipasa. And because y'all have not used this service before, I highly recommend you go to those LibGuides pages. You can also get there again from the main Fant library page and click on interlibrary loan. It even gives you a little explanation as to how interlibrary loan works. You're going to create an account. First, last name, 950 number. Use your MUW email, please. Your My Apps, I guess. Password, re-enter your password. And then create your account. What this is going to allow you to do, I'm going to go ahead and click on this right here, and I'm going to sign in. Oh no. It's been so long. I think it is just Russell. Cool. You'll see a page like this. Now, if I am, the reason we start from our databases here, because when I click on this little link here, and this is great because it helps us help you. And in that regard, it automatically fills out all of the information. Now, just because something is filled out automatically, does that mean it is always correct? Just keep that in mind, because while we will work our darndest to get you your book or article, if it is requested through interlibrary loan, the more information you provide to us, the easier it is for Ms. Robin or one of us working at the desk to request from another library so that we can get it directly to you. In the case of articles or book chapters, one recommendation I'm going to make is this service type drop down right here. Loan or copy. If for some reason or another you need the full book, you would select loan. In that case, they literally mail us the book, so it's going to take a little bit longer. What I would recommend is that you focus on copy, because that just means what they will do is send you a copy of it, and then you put in your 950. Do I have all my? Okay. Oh no. I usually try to put about 3 business days. And then when I log into my interlibrary loan account, I can see where my requests are. And then you'll get an email notifying you when that request has been fulfilled. And in that case, it'll actually show up as a little button right here. You can click on that. You can access your PDF, read your article, and continue on your research journey. I think that depends on the rights of the print. Cool, thank you. Definitely. Again, if you need to check in on your interlibrary loan, maybe you're feeling a little anxiety about getting it, you can log into this account, check it out, or you can also email or chat with us for those sorts of requests. I want to emphasize again the idea being that we have chat, text, email. Is my email right there. Scheduling an appointment. If at any point on kind of this initial start to your research journey, you need help, again, happy to provide it. Emphasizing that again, you could also just come up to the front desk and be like, is it possible for me to schedule this thing? And then a person will help you through that process and get you a meeting or research appointment for that. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions if there are more detailed things that I can provide as far as tools go. If y'all got a QR code here, or if you could type this in and do this while you're sitting here real quick to give me a 5 stars on Yelp. I would really appreciate it. It's very helpful for me as far as getting that feedback and being able to reflect on the quality of my instruction. And with that, any questions? Thoughts, concerns? Cool beans. Well, thank y'all for your time. I appreciate it. And again, it's not the end, it's just the beginning of your research journey. Anything I can do to help.
This friend did film this, right?
Yes.
So I'll put a link to the session on our Canvas site. So if you need to review it, and have it available.